Several weeks ago, Kristen said she wanted me to give a presentation. And the material she wanted was about the history of the World War II camps, and then how the Sahara family went from camp to camp. And then she also wanted me to talk about the Torrance Memorial Wall Project. So how do I just go click it?
Wait, sorry, Grandpa, can you take your mask off?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so before World War II, the Sahara family lived in Los Angeles. And then, the place in Los Angeles called Uptown, it still exists. It's along Olympic Boulevard. And then the cross streets are Western and what's the other cross? Vermont, I guess. So then we lived on Dewey Avenue in Uptown. So from our street, from where our house was down to Olympic Boulevard, it was 100% Japanese families. And the other way, it was 100% non-Japanese. So, Japanese, live sort of in a restricted area in Los Angeles. And then while we were living there before the war, my two older sisters, Mariko and Smita, they were already attending high school. So they went to Poly High School. And I think Poly High School still exists someplace in LA. And then my youngest sister, Toshko, and I, we were still attending Hobart Grammar School. And Hobart still exists also. And I was in the third grade at that time. And then our family attended the St. Mary's Episcopal Church. So in Uptown at that time, there were two churches. There was a Christian church, St. Mary's Episcopal Church, and then there was a Buddhist church. So your family went to one or the other. And so then our family went to the Episcopal Church. And then both churches also had the Japanese language school. So then at St. Mary's, I used to go to the public school first. And on the way home, I would stop off at St. Mary's with a Japanese language. So I think it was about 1 hour class. So that's all the language school was at St. Mary's. Now at the Buddhist church, I think the way they had it was they had an all-day Saturday. So you go Japanese language all day Saturday. And at the Buddhist church, they would have families come from out in the farms. They would drive their children in to go to language school on Saturday. But anyway, that's how it was, we were supposed to learn Japanese language. And I didn't learn too much because I was going only about 3 years. But my older sisters, they went to Japanese language a long time, so then they could speak real well. Okay, so here is a map of Los Angeles. So then on the west side of Los Angeles, there's a place called Uptown. So Uptown, I think that was just a Japanese name, but for the Japanese, there was downtown where the little Tokyo was, and they called that Nihonmachi downtown. And uptown means up, so they call it Uemachi. So anyway, that's we had a Japanese settlement there in Uptown. And then there were also, a lot of other Japanese settlements. Let me just use the pointers. There were settlements out there in West LA or Southtown here, and also in East LA. But there are, different Japanese settlement, but the one that we lived in was called Uptown. Okay, so then, like I said, it had one Christian church, which we attended, in the Buddhist church. Okay. Now, most of the Japanese that lived in Uptown, they were gardeners. So that was the main occupation of the fathers at that time before World War II. And then meanwhile, my father had like a grocery store or a produce stand. So he had his store on Pico Avenue. Okay. Now this is the public school. It's called Hobart Grammar School, and it's still standing there. Okay. Now the way it was that when the Japanese children started going to school, most of them then speak English. So then they had to learn English, right away. And I remember that the time that I had to go to a hospital. Well, before I go to hospital, my older sister had me teach me English words so I could talk to the nurses and stuff like that. So at that time, the Japanese children, they just spoke Japanese until they started school. And then right away had to learn English, okay? So some Nisei students had to go kindergarten for 2 years. So the first year to learn English. Okay, so all our family attended Hobart. And then at evacuation 1942, I was in 3rd grade, okay? And one of the top job at the grammar school was selling ice cream. And that's the job that my sister, Smita, had. Okay, so then when you sell ice cream, you're able to handle money. Okay, and our family attended St. Mary's Episcopal Church. Now, there were, like I said, 2 churches in Uptown that time. There was a Buddhist church and a Christian church. And the Christian church was this one, Episcopal, and it's still there right now. So people are still going to St. Mary's Episcopal Church. So on the way home from public school, I had to stop off at St. Mary's to attend language school. So I think it was about 1 hour to learn Japanese language. And then after you finish that, then you go on home. Okay, oh, what happened there?
You can go back.
How do I go back?
So you can go back with this one.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so the World War II, I think that's what you came to hear about. So people of Japanese ancestry had to go to camp, okay? And so there were 2 sets of camps. The first one you went to, and then the second permanent one. The first one was a temporary one that they called the Assembly Center. So the people in Los Angeles had to go to the Santa Anita Assembly Center. And it's a huge place. Now, Santa Anita, there's that racetrack on Santa Anita racetrack. So in the parking lot, they put up buildings. So then in Santa Anita, they had 18,000 people of Japanese ancestry living there. Now, about 8,000 of those lived in the horse stables, and 10,000 lived in the barracks that were put up in the parking lot. So I had an uncle named Saikichi, and he lived in the horse stables. But our family, we lived in the barracks in the parking lot. So like I said, there was 1,000 people living in both the barracks, the barracks in the parking lot, and also the stable. So we were lucky, we lived in the parking lot. So what they did was they built army-style parking lot, and then they divided it into 6 units. And then our family, we had 3 sisters and myself, and father and mother, so that's 6 of us. So we got the N unit, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, F. I guess F is the N unit for the 6 people. And then the other, units had smaller spacing and less people. But we lived in Santa Anita Assembly Center, okay? And then I was in 3rd grade at that time, so that I used to go to the school. But then remember, December 7th is when the war started. And in spring and April of 1942, the following year is when we went to Santa Anita, okay? So then I was in 3rd grade at that time. And I used to go to school, which was in the grandstand. Okay, so then the school at that time was in the grandstand. So then all I did was I used to throw out paper planes from the top stairs of the grandstand. Okay, but the grandstand was where they used to make the camouflage net for the U.S. Army. Okay. And then, because the Geneva Convention said that the POWs cannot work on war manufacturing, the Issei's could not work on the camouflage nets. So only the Nisei's were making those camouflage nets for the U.S. Army. But anyway, that was my 3rd grade. How do I do this again? Okay, So then here I got the list of incarceration for the people of Japanese ancestry during World War II. Okay, so first we went to Sanita, and Sanita is a column of things that they call the temporary detention stations. Okay, so then there were 20 or so, or almost 20 temporary detention stations. So you could look at, see all those others that they had, like they had not for the people in Central California. Okay, but people in Los Angeles went to Sanita, and it was huge. It had 18,000 people. And then from there, we went to a permanent detention station. And the one we were sent to was Jerome, Arkansas. So Jerome was in the southeast corner of Arkansas. So from 1942 to 1944, we were in Jerome. Okay. And then in 1944, they closed Jerome. So we were sent to Rover, Arkansas. And that was also in the southeast corner of Arkansas. So you can see that we went to the temporary detention stations first, and then the permanent camps later, and the permanent camps were in Arkansas. Okay, but you can see the list of all the other camps that the Army had for the Japanese people. Okay. Okay, so then this is where the different camps were located. And you can see the Camp Jerome and also the Camp Rower, and they were Arkansas. So those were the camps that the people of Japanese ancestry were sent to in World War II. Okay, now let me get back to Sanita. So that's how the Sanita looked when they put up barracks in the parking lot for 10,000 people. So like I mentioned, our family, we're lucky we lived in the barracks, while my uncle lived in the stables. So then those are the barracks that the people lived in. And the barracks didn't have any running water or anything like that. So then they had mess halls. So there were 6 mess halls in Sanita. So the 18,000 people that lived there ate at one of the 6 mess halls. Now in Sanita, my father had a job as a cook in one of the mess halls, and then my sister, the older sister, Mariko, she had a job as a waitress in one of the mess halls. Okay. Now my father was never a cook. He was, before the war, he was in the produce business selling fruits and vegetables. So, when they passed out jobs, just got in long positions, okay, you're the cook. So now he was a cook at Sanita. Okay, so anyway, like I said, we lived in the barrack, and my uncle, the oldest uncle, Saikichi, lived in the stables. So then in Sanita, they had all these barracks there, and I think they had 6 mess halls to eat at. And then I think they had about 6 shower buildings. Okay. So then you had to, walk long distance to go to shower. And then the thing about Sanita is you can see right there, that's the parking lot that they put the barracks on. And in the parking lot, they also put up the latrines and stuff. And for the latrines, they dug septic tanks right in the, ground there. And after, several months, it started overflowing. So then they have to, pipe it out. So it wasn't, too good of a place to live in because the septic tanks are overflowing every day. Okay, but this is a temporary detention station. Okay, now here's the top view of Sanita, and you can see all the barracks, and then you can see now the big buildings there. The big buildings there are the ones that already existed before. So these are stables. So these stables are here from before. But here now this is the parking lot, and you can see the barracks that they built in the parking lot. Now these are the barracks, all the barracks, okay. So the barracks are in the parking lot, and the stables are up there. And like I mentioned, my uncle Saikichi, he lived in the stables. And then we live down here someplace, one of these barracks down here. So I think, trying to remember, I think our barrack number was T16 or something like that. Okay. And then here's the grandstand. And then, this is where the school was, in this grandstand. And then over here was where they had the laundry room. Then you have to, remember that they carry your dirty clothes all the way up to here and then wash it in the laundry room and then carry it back home like that. Okay. And then, like I mentioned, this is the grandstand, and that's where they had the classes. So I went to spring, December of 1942, I went to school in the grandstand. And then this is parking. This is in the middle of the horse race. This is the over the horse race. So then this is where my father parked his car, okay, or his truck. So the way we did it was, there were buses that came to the St. Mary Episcopal Church. There were about 20 buses or so. So the family all got into the buses, but my father, he drove to San Diego. So they had a long caravan. And in front of the caravan were all the buses. And then behind the caravan were all the pickup trucks and cars and stuff like that. So my father, parked his car there. And once he parked it, that was the last time in his life that he ever drove again. Yeah. Before he used to drive a lot, because before he used to have to go to the produce market every morning, like at 3 o'clock. So the 6 days a week, you have to drive down there, the produce, and then bring the fruits and vegetables to his stand. So he used to drive a lot. And then before the war, my father had 2 vehicles, stake truck for the produce, and then the passenger sedan for the on Sundays and stuff when the whole family would go out. But once he parked his car in there, he never drove again. Yeah. So he lived a long time after the war, but he never drove again. Now, next we have, okay, so here is a photograph. I don't know where I got this photograph of people, standing in line to eat meal. Now, Santa Anita, we had 18,000 people living there. And I think there were six mess halls. And then each mess hall could seat about 800 at a time. So there had to be about 3 turnovers at each mess hall, for everybody to get to eat. And then it said, Nita, my older sister, Monica, got a job as a waitress in a mess hall. And my father had a job as a cook in a mess hall. So then, when you sign up for camp, as you go through registry, they give you different jobs. And so, okay, you're a cook, and then you're a waitress like that. That's how you get your job assignment. So if you're not on your toes, you get a bad job. So here's a photograph of, people eating in camp. So we had these long tables that we sat down and ate at. Okay. So here's a milk station. And the reason I wanted to show a picture of a milk station is that, the rooms, then I have a refrigerator or anything like that. So the mothers with a young baby, they had no place to store their milk. So what they had to do is they had to go to a milk station. And so the milk station, I suppose, was open 24 hours a day. But my second sister, Smita, she had a job in the milk station. So you just sit in there, and then the mothers would come and you just give the bottles of milk. Okay. So here we are sunning our mattress. So some doctor had a good idea that if you sun your mattress in the sun every Saturday and kill all the germs, then it'll be healthy for everybody. So here we are, sunning our mattress. Okay. So I think now people, you don't do that, do you? But if you did that, you'll kill all your germs every Saturday. Okay, so that's what we had to do. Okay, so here's the grandstand of the San Anita. And in the grandstand, that this is during the war. So they had the Niseis working on the camouflage net. So it's real convenient, you could just lower the net from the ceiling of the grandstand, and then you weave in the different color burlap. And this is where they had the school too. So the grandstand is where they had the grammar school. Okay. Oh, okay. So the San Anita was what they call a temporary assembly center. So they had temporary assembly centers, San Anita, and they had at Fresno and stuff like that. And from the temporary center, we were sent to the permanent camps, okay? And they used to call it relocation camp. And then there were 2 permanent camps in Arkansas. So the way they did it was, well, when we went to San Anita, we got on the bus. And when we got on the bus, you're in a sequence, huh? And then when you get off the bus in San Anita, you get off in sequence. So then you're assigned barracks in sequence. So the way you're assigned is the way you got off the bus. And now we got on the bus again, and we're going to Jerome, Arkansas. In Arkansas, that was a permanent relocation center. And again, because the way we got on the bus and so forth, people in Block 19 were people from the same part of Los Angeles. They were from uptown. So the people in Block 19 were the people that we knew from before the war, okay? So we lived in Block 19. And then we lived in Barrack 8. And then people that lived next to us in Dewey, in Los Angeles, they also lived on the same barrack, okay? So that was how it was in Jerome, Block 19. Block 19 were people that we knew from before the war. Okay, so here's a big photograph of Jerome. And then this photograph doesn't show any trees, but Block 19 was at the edge of the camp, and it was right next to the forest, okay? So our block had a lot of trees, okay? So like I said, the people in Block 19 were the people that we knew from before the war. Okay, so here's a typical photograph of a block that had trees. And like I mentioned, our block had trees. Okay, and then you can see on the stair, by the stair, you can see those woods. So in Jerome, it gets sort of cold in the winter. So we had to chop down trees for firewood. Okay, so Jerome, all summer, the men, they would have what they call lumberjack. And all summer, the men would have to go out in the forest and chop down trees, and they would haul it to the blocks. And then at the block, they would cut trees up into smaller segments and then chop it up so that you can see those woods there, huh? So it has to be small enough to put into the, they had these, we didn't have any fireplace, but we had, I don't know what you call stoves or whatever, but these are potbelly stoves that you burn wood. Okay, so then all summer the men had to go chopping down trees so that we could have enough wood to burn during the winter. Okay, so you had to put a couple of those logs in each night before you go to sleep. And over there, this is Arkansas, so they used to have what we call sleet. Now, sleet is different from snow. You know what a snow is, but sleet is formed when you have rain, and rain is falling down, and it's so cold that the rain freezes. So you get tiny balls of ice falling down. Okay, so that's sleet, and that's what they had in Arkansas. So anyway, for the people from California, this is the first time they saw sleet. So at first they thought it was snow, but then everybody told us, no, it's not snow, it's sleet. So that's what we had in Arkansas. Okay, and then, okay, so then they wanted the people to be leaving camp. Now, the way the camp was organized is that they put everybody that lived in California, they put them in camp, and then those people, Japanese people that live in the western half of the state of Oregon and western half state of Washington, they put in camp. Okay, so we were in camp, and then we were sent to, first the assembly center at San Anita, and then to the permanent relocation camp in Arkansas. What the government wanted was the people in camp to leave camp. Okay, so because Japanese people that lived in Chicago and New York, they didn't have to go to camp. But anyway, they want us out of the West Coast, and they want us to leave camp. Okay, so we left camp in 1945. And so then the way we left camp was my two older sisters. Now, older sister was Mariko. She graduated from camp in high school in Jerome. And then my second sister was Simire. She graduated from camp in Dover. So as soon as she graduated from camp, then my two older sisters, they left camp and went to Chicago. And after they found a place to live in Chicago and a job, then they called my father. So my father left in the spring of 1945 for Chicago. And then after he found a job and found a place to live, then in the summer of 1945, my younger sister, Toshko, myself, and my mother, we left camp and headed for Chicago. Okay, so we went from camp to Chicago in stages. Now, the way the government did, they gave everybody $25 to start a new life. So we had to go to Chicago with $25 and start a new life. Okay, so then this is a picture of Rower. Did I show this before? But this is a picture of Rower, and you can see that there's a ditch right there, huh? So there's a lot of rain in Rower. So around each block, there was a moat like that. Okay. Now each block had about 250 to 300 people living there. So each block was composed of, 12 barracks like that. 12 barracks plus a mess hall where you ate, plus women's latrine and men's latrine, and then a laundry room. Okay. So this is a typical block in the woody part of Rower. Yeah, most of the Rower was in a dry area where they didn't have any trees at all. Okay. Okay, so then my older sister graduated from high school, and then my second sister graduated from high school. So then they left camp and they went to Chicago. Okay, so then they found a place to live and they found a job. And then after that, then they called my father, and my father left camp and he found a place to live and found a job. And after that, then my younger sister, Toshko, my mother and I, we left camp to go to Chicago. So we left in camp to go in Chicago in stages. Okay, so when we first went to Chicago, we moved to a place called Clark Division. And that's famous among the Japanese people because that's where a lot of Japanese people relocated to right after camp. Now if you see that Clark Street, you can see that Clark Street, huh? So we're on the this side of Clark Street, okay? But now they knocked that all down and there's a large housing development there. So then the place that we were living in doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, right after World War II, there was, thousands of Japanese lived on Clark Division in Chicago. It's in Exmark where we live. We see where all the other people live. And they had, a lot of stores and stuff on Clark Street. And then I used to walking south, and I went to Ogden Grammar School. I mentioned Ogden Grammar School there. And then now they, Ogden Grammar School at that time did not have a playground. It didn't have a cafeteria. It didn't have an assembly hall. It didn't have a teacher's lounge. It didn't have anything. But now they redid that grammar school, so it's brought up to date. But that grammar school was built in 1881 or so, the one that I attended. So that grammar school, no playground, no ball, because if you have a ball, then the ball will roll in the streets. So the way people play, when they would get a sailor's cap and fold it up and throw that around. But that's the grammar school that I attended. Okay. So now here's the house of in that. Now California had the alien land law, and the alien land law said that people of Japanese ancestry could not buy property in California. But anyway, Illinois, anybody could buy land, any resident alien. So he was happy to buy this, what they call a 3-story flat. Okay, so then we lived on the first floor, and then we rented out the second and third floor. So then we bought that in around 1947 or something. And then, I left there to come to California, stuff like that. But my sister, she lived there for about 7 years. So that property was in our family for a long time. You could see how nice it looks. So anyway, it's a 3-story flat. And my father was really happy to buy it because in California, they had an alien land law where he says could not own property in California. Okay, so then this is the high school that I went to. So this is a nice imposing picture of the high school. And then for undergraduate, I went to Illinois Institute of Technology. So then this is a nice picture of that. And then for graduate, I went to Northwestern University. Okay, and then I worked at General Dynamics, and then they had a division in Pomona. So I worked for General Dynamics for 38 years. So I worked there my whole career. Okay, yeah. So anyway, like I said, I worked at General Dynamics for my whole career, almost for 40 years. And then most of the time it was in Pomona, California. But then for several years, I worked for General Dynamics in Tucson, Arizona. Okay. So then I was a supervisor at General Dynamics and I had about 30 or so engineers working for me. So I had a good job at General Dynamics. Now, what I want to do now is to make a World War II Camp Memorial in Torrance, okay? And then what I want to do is on the walls, so I want to have walls, one or more walls for each camp. So each camp would have the names of people that were in that camp. And then there were 10 camps, okay, during World War II. Now let's see if I can remember them. Now in Arkansas, we had Jerome and Rohr. In Arizona, we had Gila and Poston. In California, we had Tootie Lake and Manzanar. And then we had Minidoka, Idaho. And we had Hartmont, Wyoming. And Topaz, Alex, Utah. And where's the 10th one? But anyway, there were 10 camps for the Japanese during World War II. So what I want to have an honor roll wall in Torrance. So there'll be 10 walls, one for each camp. And then the names of everybody that was in that camp. So then there'll be about 20,000 names altogether. And then what I'm thinking about is it could be in Columbia Park. You know where Columbia Park is? You know where that is? Okay, so then it's 190th Street. And what's the other cross street? Prairie, yeah. So then that's where I wanted to be. So we have, walls there, one wall for each camp. And I think I've talked to several, people already. So then the city of Torrance knows, what I want to do. So I hope that we could build this honor roll wall. So honor roll wall would be by camps, there'd be 10 walls, and each wall would have the names of everybody that was in that camp. And if you were in 2 camps, then you would be on 2 walls. So I think, it would be nice if we could get it. Now, meanwhile, the state assemblyman, Almaro Chichi, got $5 million for that wall. And then we have a committee working on it. And then, committee is composed of younger people than me. So, they could do a better job than me. Okay, so here's just a photograph on the wall. Okay, and then also I want to have, right next to the walls, we want to have the display panels. And the display panels would describe, what the camps were, stuff like that. So it'd be composed of 2 parts. One wall would be the unrolled walls with a name, and the second part would be the display panel that describes the camp and things like that. Okay, so then so here's a picture of Columbia Park in Torrance. So then in the southeast corner there, someplace in the southeast corner is where I will have the honor roll wall. And then the Columbia Park is where they have the every spring the Cherry Blossom Festival. So then that park is sort of associated with the Japanese people. So having the honor roll walls in there, I think would be real good. Okay. So anyway, so that's all the material that I have about the camp and stuff. So you have any questions now? Okay, like I was saying, where I lived in camp in Jerome, Arkansas, and then Aurora, Arkansas. Each camp had about 8,000 people. And then over there in camp, they had, schools. So I was attending elementary school in Jerome and then Aurora. Okay. So those are, quote, better than San Anita. San Anita, the school was in the grandstand. So then in San Anita, when I went to school, all I did was throw paper planes out of the, top seats of the grandstand. So what happened, yeah.
What was your most difficult experience that you had, the most trying experience? See your parents going through all this,
Well,
your family.
Okay, well, I was going to tell you that. So in the 1942, they took us out of school in spring of 1942, and then went to the school over there in the grandstand to San Anita. So then in the fall of 1942, when I started elementary school in Arkansas, my mother told the school, hold that guy back 1 year because he didn't learn anything this year. So I got demoted 1 semester when I started school in Arkansas.
How did you feel?
Well, I didn't feel too good, but then, later on, I had to go to summer school to make up, to catch up. But I was behind, half year for a while. You have any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. When you're saying Ise, what are the different, or what does that mean? And
Say it again.
Your Ise or Nise, those different groups. Can you
Yeah.
explain those?
Okay. So then the way it works is that people that immigrated from Japan to America They were born in Japan, emigrated to the US. They're called Issei. Issei means one. Okay. And then their children that were born here in the US are called Nisei. Ni means two. And the children of the Nisei are called Sansei. Because Sansei means three. Okay. So then for the Japanese, they call it Issei, Nisei, and Sansei. So then, when you say that to an old time Nisei, they know what they're talking about. Yes. Yeah. But mine case is a little different. See, I have three older sisters, and they're all born in Los Angeles. So then they're Nisei. Okay, they're born here. But then my mother's grandparent got sick. So she went to Japan, and I was in Japan while she was there for the 1 year. Okay, so I'm a citizen of Japan when I was born. Okay, so then I could be categorized as a Issei, even though my sisters are all Nisei. So my case is a little different.
So when did you become an American?
Okay, so then the way it was is that the law in the US for a long time was that people of Japanese ancestry could not become US citizens. Okay, so then no matter how long you lived in the US, if you were born in Japan, you could not become US citizen. So that was my case. I was born in Japan because my mother went there for 1 year. So I could not become US citizen. Now, when I started college, I wanted to take ROTC. So I told the teacher, the professor in charge of ROTC that, could I sign up? And the guy said, well, you can't become a US citizen. ROTC after 4 years, you're supposed to be an officer, but you can't become an officer if they can't be a US citizen. So then I couldn't take ROTC. But then after that, the US changed the law. So people from Japan could become US citizens. So now I'm a US citizen. So I became a US citizen in 1952 because, when I started working for companies that worked on defense matters. So you had to be a US citizen to get a job.
So if you were a Nisei
Yeah.
after the war, could you have bought a house in California for your family to come back and live in California?
Yeah, I could have.
You
If
could
I was
have,
if I was a
okay.
Nisei, yeah.
But because your dad was an Issei,
Mhm.
then he could not buy a house in
Yeah.
California. Okay. And when did the US change the law so that foreign-born Japanese could buy property?
I think around 1952.
Okay.
Yeah, it was after the war.
Did that also apply to Chinese people back then?
I don't know. I think so.
In Hawaii, I understand that when they put everyone in concentration camps, the Chinese started buying up all the property from the Japanese because you can't own property. What are you going to do with the property? And so the Chinese, lowball it. And so right now, a lot of them, Chinese own a lot of land, and it's been generations and generations. So there was some animosity there too.
Yeah, this is in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, yeah. So Waller High School, right? You used to wear a bow tie and carry a briefcase.
Waller High School?
Yeah, when you were in Waller.
No, Lower High School.
We didn't carry a briefcase.
Oh, no,
I mean,
no.
we didn't bow tie or anything.
Oh, no bow tie or anything.
See, are you from Chicago?
No, I know a guy who went to Waller High School.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he just turned 88.
He said he
And
was your classmate.
Oh, yeah.
well, not your classmate, but
He
he
knew
was
you.
about a year older than you.
Mhm.
And he recalled that you used to carry a briefcase or no?
Do you know me?
He said you probably don't know him, but he knows you.
Oh, yeah.
He used to hang out with all the Italians,
Oh, yeah.
the Italian high school kids.
There are a lot of Italians.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, so he lived in Chicago.
He lived in Chicago. He went to Topaz.
Topaz.
His name is Fred Kiyohara. So, and he lives over there next to Benihana, you know that. But so I saw him last night, just turned 88, and we're talking. And I mentioned this gathering, and he says, "Oh, yeah."
He knows.
Oh,
He
yeah.
knows
Yeah,
what
yeah,
is up. Yeah.
But yeah, so he said, "Oh yeah, I remember him wearing a bow tie, carrying a briefcase." But he thought you became a professor or educator, no?
No, I was an engineer.
Oh, okay.
See, Fred's man is losing him too.
Yeah.
I think that could be correct. Bow tie and briefcase. I don't know if we have found. Christine, have you found a bow tie and a
Looking right
briefcase?
now for a picture. That's my brother-in-law's. Fred's memory is also not there.
What kind of food did they serve you in camp?
Oh, they serve regular food. They serve rice, and they had fish. So fish, you know, you could either have the top half or the bottom half, part with the head or the part with the tail. Yeah, they serve regular food.
Was it good?
Well, that I survived. I eat anything, you know. Yeah, we had the missile, they have lots of cook, and most of the cooks were not cooks before the war. Okay, so they were gardeners or something like that. So then, I think they didn't know how to prepare the material that they got. So then, we lived in Rower, and sometimes they would even give us oysters. Oysters are expensive.
Did you eat with your family units?
Yeah, that way it was that I'm trying to remember that. See, in San Nita, they had I think 6 missiles for 18,000 people. So you had, and I think it was only 800 at a time. Okay, so I think at that time, I used to go eat with my mother. Now in Jerome, Jerome, we lived in blocks now. So in a block, they had 12 barracks, and they had 250 to 300 people per block. And each block had a missile. Okay, and then each block had a women's latrines, men's latrine, and laundry room. And then around each block was a moat. Okay, because it rained quite a bit, so they had the moat. They had the bridges across the moat. Okay, so then it was distinct units. So maybe 250 to 300 people in one block. And then the block we lived in Jerome, was people from uptown. Okay, so the people in Jerome were people that we knew from before the war. So in our barrack would be living the family that was next door to us on Dewey Avenue in Los Angeles. So that's how it was in Jerome, that everybody lived on a block. And our block was block 19. And it was everybody that lived before the war in uptown. But then they closed Jerome to make that into a POW camp, German POW camp. And they went to Rower. So when we got to Rower, we were put into, empty spots in each barrack. So we were put into a block 7. And these people were downtown people. So before the war, these people knew each other in downtown LA, but then we were just put in there. So we were like a newcomer. So, we didn't know the people that were there.
How come downtown people and uptown people didn't know each other? I mean, it's not that far away, but I guess back then you didn't.
It's
socialize.
several miles away.
Mhm.
Uptown is Vermont Avenue,
Mhm.
and downtown is, Yeah. So then I think maybe some people know each other, but most people, uptown people just knew uptown people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What happens if you outgrew your shoes and you needed a new pair of shoes?
Well, see, then, we either got a Sears Roebuck catalog or Montgomery Ward catalog. So you could just buy it from a catalog. So that's what everybody used to do, buy a catalog. So you either a Sears or a Montgomery Ward person.
I
Yeah.
think the Zoom room has some questions, Grandpa.
Yeah, I had a question.
Okay.
I was just wondering, so as of recent, there's definitely been an increase in ostracization of minorities. And there's been a rise in Asian hate crimes. And I just wanted to know what your perspective or like what you thought about it. Because of you having lived through internment camps and now seeing, a rise in hate crimes, especially towards minorities. So
Yeah, that for me, that I used to live in Claremont. People know where Claremont, California is. So we used to have a nice house north of Baseline Avenue, which is a good part of Claremont. So anyway, I'm trying to figure out now, because of the work I did, I worked at General Dynamics. We had to work in, so I had to move down to Tucson, Arizona for about 4 years. And then while I was gone, somebody threw a Molotov cocktail in my house. So they threw it through the window. So then, the house was burned quite a bit. So I think only one wall was standing. It was a two-story building. Only one wall was standing. So then I had to sell that house. So I would say that would be due to hate crime. Somebody that, want me and didn't want me, back. See, that time I was living in Tucson, I guess they don't want me to come back to Claremont, California. So that's the experience that I had. Yeah, if it wasn't for that right now, I'd be living in Claremont because, I own that house. So then that's when Jane said, let's buy in the South Bay. So that's why we moved down here.
You know of anybody who moved back to uptown, that area?
Oh, yeah.
I know that there's some.
Yeah,
still some
there's
Japanese.
a lot of, I think there's a lot of Japanese living there. And I think the St. Mary's Episcopal Church is still, functioning. I think they have, I don't know if they have a lot, but they have Japanese there. I think after the war, a lot of Mexicans moved into uptown area. Any other questions?
So downtown is also East LA. I know that there's a old Japanese population still there, but a lot of Hispanics moved in.
Yeah, downtown is right next to East LA. Yeah, well, uptown is, there's some space between uptown and downtown.
Yeah, like Mid Wilshire is more affluent, white, and a lot of Koreatown is there.
Right. So then, there's Olympic Boulevard, that goes east and west. And then our cross street was Dewey. And then when you go north from Olympic First Street, you see San Marino. And then you go some more, and then you get the Wilshire and stuff like that, huh? So, it gets more upscale as you go north. I even noticed that when I was 8 years old, that if you walk on Olympic Boulevard, and if you walk on Block North, hey, there's a difference between this street and that street. I think now I don't think it's that good of an area. Is there any more questions from the internet?
I actually have a quick question. So for South Bay or for Torrance area, Krista and I were talking about how, or she told me it was like the highest populated percentage of Japanese Americans. I guess, do you have some background as to why that is the case? Was it like one of the areas that was more vacant as far as like housing goes, or how did it become?
Say it again.
Or how did Torrance become the highest populated kind of Japanese American?
Oh, I think Japanese first, they're living in Gardena. And then from Gardena, they started moving south. So then the next, town south was Torrance. So I think that's how it became, a lot of Japanese.
How did they get to Gardena?
I think there were a lot of Japanese in Gardena before the war. But like us, we live, way north of Gardena, in Uptown. And Uptown was along Olympic Boulevard. So Uptown was part of Los Angeles. And then I think after the war, people started moving south from there. And I don't think not too many Japanese still live in Uptown.
Was there farming in the South Bay in the war, during the war time?
I think before the war in
Or was there
Gardena,
farming
yeah.
down here?
But there was no farming in Uptown.
Yeah.
I think there was farming in Gardena.
I went to high school with somebody who remembers being on a farm, I think. So that was in the South Bay area, which I guess like his parents had a farm. So, and that's someone my age.
But that was Gardena, huh?
Yeah, I think they were like, I was thinking like towards like the 91, like towards Dominguez Hills, where that is. Yeah, was that area? That seems like that could have been farms back then. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't remember any farms in Uptown area.
Someone on Zoom wants to know if there are any opportunities to donate to your project.
Okay, that I was gonna. Yeah, I gotta ask Nancy. We're trying to get what we call nonprofit status. You know anything about that, Kristen?
Question for the treasurer. The nonprofit status has not been fully, or is not complete yet, so you can't donate yet. But once that goes through, then we can accept donations.
How much money are you trying to raise?
I'm not exactly sure, but I think state of California are going to give us $5 million. Huh? So. Yeah.
How long have you been working on this project for?
Say it again.
How long have you been working on this project for?
This memorial wall, about 2 years or something like that. So then, we've been, talking to the city. So the city knows that, we've been working on this. So I made presentations to the city council and stuff like that. But after we get the money, and then we got the definite plan, then we have to go to the city to have the city approve it because it'll be on the city property. But do you know Columbia Park?
I've never been there, but I know it's right there.
It's on 190th Street. So we're gonna have it right there.
So when do you think the project could be completed by?
It'll be several years, I think. Won't you ask her?
it's a big project. We're at the very beginning, but it's exciting.
Someone else asked, can you please tell us more about a typical school day in camp?
Oh, the camp school day, I think, is almost the same as here. But we have to, we have to walk to school. And then lunchtime, we have to walk back to our block to eat lunch. Then we have to walk back to school. And then I think that time everybody have briefcases. You know, yeah, you have to have a briefcase to bring home your stuff. So then, now the schools, a lot of the teachers were local white people. So then they recruit the local teachers to work in camp. So I think that's what we had. Yeah. So then I think, now this is in Arkansas, Jerome and Rower, Arkansas. Now in the spring of 1942, summer 42, I went to school in Sandita. Now that was a different experience because the classes were in the grandstand, and then I think we didn't have any class period or anything. So then the whole spring of summer 1942, I was in the grandstand throwing paper airplanes out of the top seats. So then, so that's how the spring and summer 1942. And then when I went to Jerome for the fall semester, my mother, like I told you, mother said, hold that kid back. 1 year got flunked for, half a semester, yeah, or half a year.
So did you ever take Japanese language classes after the war?
No. So then before the war, I used to go Japanese language school at St. Mary's. So then, you go to the public school, and then on the way home, you stop off at Japanese language school. And I think it was one hour there. And then after that, you continue on. So that's the way that St. Mary's was. Now, the way it was in Uptown, there was a Christian church, St. Mary's, and then there was a Buddhist church. In the Buddhist church, they had Japanese language too. And I think those people, they went all day Saturday. Okay. So ours was just, every day, 1 hour, but they did all day Saturday. And then those people, had a lot of farmers, driving their kids from out of town and stuff to go to that language school. So there was a little competition between our language school and their language school.
Do you think that those kids were able to keep up with their Japanese language learning in camp? Or did your age and your generation kind of lose the language?
I think, we all lost it.
Mhm.
They had, I remember going to Japanese language school for a short time in camp, maybe a month or two, but nothing serious. And then after the war, went to Chicago, and then my parents did an attempt to enroll me into a Japanese language school.
Did you try sending your kids to Japanese language school?
Well, and there's one right there.
And how did that go?
A lot of origami folding is all I remember.
Yeah, it's hard to do Japanese language.
Yeah, I just wonder how many third and fourth generation Japanese American kids actually were able, their families kept sending them to language school.
No, see, it's different.
Did they take a survey?
I think that reflects on the parents, not the
Oh, it did.
See, it's different from when I was young. When I was young, I just spoke Japanese. So then when I had to go to the hospital, I had to learn English words. Okay. And then when I started kindergarten, I had to learn English. Okay. So then, it's now completely different. Now everybody speaks English when they're young. But I spoke Japanese when I was young.
So you went to Northwestern University and went into engineering. So you must have been strong in math. Is that
Well, I like math, yeah. I like,
was it competitive to get into Northwestern at that time?
not that much.
Oh.
Yeah, I like math. Yeah.
Another question from the internet. Were you involved with any extracurricular activities in camp?
In camp. I don't know, extracurricular activities, like in camp, well, they judo. So then we did judo. And then let's see what else we did in camp. Yeah. You know, like in Jerome, Arkansas, you know, block 19, the sports that we did was a game called Sticks. I think, I don't know if it was invented in that block, but what you do is get, you know, logs, you know, maybe about that much, and you throw it into the ground. And then the ground was muddy, so it would stand up. Okay. And the next guy would throw his stick and try to knock yours down and have it standing up. Okay. So that everybody had these, you know, sticks that much round. And that's the game we played all day long. I don't think there's any place else that plays that sport on sticks. But, you know, that's what we did. We just played sticks. So I think in Jerome, nobody owned the football or anything.
Did you play marbles?
No, not. I'm trying to remember. Maybe we did, but all I know is the game we played was sticks. You know, you still have to have the muddy ground, so you know, stand up. Yeah.
Were there any camp events? Like, was there something special for like a holiday?
No, the camp, you know, the people that lived in camp, the prisoners, they built auditorium in camp. So then they had events at the auditorium. So then, you know, they had musical performance or whatever. So then, you know, we used to go see that. And then trying to remember movies or not. I think they might have had movies too.
Did Marco and Ted, did they meet in camp, or did Sue and Jimmy, did they meet in camp also, or they met after camp?
After, I think.
After camp.
But I think Sue and Jimmy, I think they were in the same high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So in camp, they had high school, junior high school, and elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So they had all the classes.
So Sue and Jimmy knew each other from camp.
Yeah.
Okay. But they did not start dating until after camp?
I think so, but they knew each other.
And when did they come to California? Did Jimmy go to Chicago, or how did they end up in California?
Yeah, that so I think they were dating in Rower, or they knew each other.
Okay, so they were dating in camp.
Because Jimmy's father came to see my parents. And then they tried to talk my parents into moving out to Seabrooks, New Jersey. Okay, Seabrooks, New Jersey, there was a farm and a frozen food processing place. And that's where Jimmy's father, you know, mother went that way. So then Jimmy's father was trying to talk my parents into going to Seabrooks too. But my parents said, no, they went to Chicago.
Okay, so Sue ended up going to Chicago, and then Jim, and they got married. Were they in Chicago when they got married? Okay, and then they came out to California.
Yeah, but it was complicated because he had to go to the Army.
Mhm.
So, he was in Chicago, then he went to Army, and, then came back and all that.
How old was Jimmy during camp?
I think he was,
He just graduated high school, probably same
Yeah.
age as Sue, right?
yeah, I think he was about 18 or whatever in camp. He was still going, he went to high school in camp.
Mhm. And then he ended up going to the war, going to the army after.
Yeah, after the war ended.
Okay, but was he in the army during the war? Or that was
I
after?
don't know, but I think he went to Japan after the end of the war.
Were Issei allowed to join the army or
So again,
were Issei allowed to join the army or?
I don't know. I suppose, but but Jimmy, he was a Nisei.
There was a draft, right? So he had to join the army, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
he had a draft that time.
yeah, that was interesting. We wish we'd had a chance to talk to Uncle Jimmy before that.
Mhm.
So where did you meet your wife? In Chicago?
I forget now.
You remember the year that you met? What about when you got married?
Yeah, I met her out here. Yeah,
So you came here for work and then you met Jimmy out in
Yeah.
California, right? 'Cause-
I was working at General Dynamics, and they have a plant in Pomona.
And she was working there, and that's where.
No, I don't know where she was working. She was working. Oh yeah, she was a physical therapist. So she was working for what they call a state program. And you look after cerebral palsy kids. So then, physical therapy is supposed to help people walk and stuff like that, huh? But cerebral palsy has to do with the brain, brain damage. So even though, you're working on your legs and all that, I think it makes them able to walk.
When did you taiko drum?
Okay, so then I did taiko drum about 30 years ago. So then this was West Covina. At that time, we lived in, what town was that anyway?
Claremont?
Claremont or Pomona, but I used to go to the West Covina Community Center. And then the West Covina Community Center, they had one guy making taiko. So I made a taiko. So, you get a whiskey barrel and you take it apart and then you put it together. And then you had to have nails there to keep the staves together. And then you put in leather at the end. Yeah. So that's, it's a big operation. I think, I saw that taiko there many times after West Covina. So if you go to the community center, you might see a taiko there. Taiko, they come in the big one and then the small one. So the mine is a small one.
Did you make your own drum, Amanda?
I've never made one myself.
Okay.
You're a taiko drummer
I played in college, yeah.
in college?
Yeah.
Where did you people get your drums?
Our older members used to be part of SF Taiko Band, so San Francisco Taiko. And they learned how to make the drums from when I was there too. So the drums that we used are passed down from generation. So it's also the wine barrel method, I think.
It's a big wine barrel,
Yeah, it's very big. Even the small ones are big.
huh? Yeah, it's fun making it.
It's very fun. We do a lot of the reheading. So we don't make the drums anymore really, but we take off the skin and then put new ones on.
sometimes.
You guys reskin it sometime?
Yes.
Yeah, that knowledge is also just passed down to,
Hmm.
you teach all the new members how to do it too, so we don't lose it. Do you remember did you ever play with,
You have to play with the West Covina Taiko.
also West Korean tech? I don't think I've ever seen you play before.
Yeah, this is, 30 years ago or something, a long time ago.
Do you know if the team is still around?
Say again?
Do you know if their team is still around, like the West Covina?
Oh, I think they still do it. I think West Covina is a community center.
Okay.
So then they have a type at the community center. They have a nice big building, gym and stuff like that.
That's wonderful.
Mhm.
Another question from the internet. Where did Jimmy go to college and how many years?
Say again?
Where did Jimmy go to college and how many years?
Okay, Jimmy Osoda, he went to University of Michigan. So I think he just went to college for 1 or 2 years. So
And another one. What was judo like in camp?
okay, so then judo in camp, sometimes they would have it outdoors, So in camp, they have to make a judo mat out of campus. And then they have it outdoors. So I think judo in camp and judo outside camp is the same. I think it's just, judo is the same anywhere. You have to, first you have to have your outfit. They call it the dogi. You have to have your white jacket. And then I don't know where my parents got that jacket. But my parents also somehow got hold of a kendo outfit, You know what a kendo is, huh? That's the bamboo sword fighting.
You did that in camp?
No,
They
but
brought that in, like, didn't you just get one suitcase? Where did you fit with the helmet?
my parents had that. I don't know how we got it, but I remember having that out in Claremont.
Did you pass that on to Richard?
It's in that room right over there.
Let me see.
Yeah, is he still here?
Yeah.
How that came about. But
That's not the one from camp. That one's not from camp, is it?
I don't know how I got it.
Do you still have relatives in Japan and do you keep in touch?
Okay, that I'm trying to remember. Now,
Do you have cousins?
1980, around 1983 or so, I went to Japan. And that time I still had relatives.
So was this yours or this is just Richard's? Because that makes a big difference whether we keep it or not.
Should be Richard's.
Okay, so you bought this for Richard. You did not take this to camp with you, right? Okay, just checking. It's very small.
Yeah, what was the question again?
So in Japan, you have relatives still.
Right.
What part of Japan and do you keep in
Okay.
touch? You said in '83 you went to Japan and
Okay, so then in Japan, that I'm from Hiroshima, and my father is from Hiroshima too, but he's from Hera, which is on the mainland. But Hiroshima has island, so then my mother's from an island, and I think the island is called Nomijima. And I think since the war ended, they built a bridge from the island to the mainland Honshu. So, more people live there. So I think I went there and I started about '83. And they're talking, since we got the bridge, we're going to start paving the road, on this island. So I think a lot of people live on the island so that commutes to work on the mainland. But, when I was there, you had to take a boat from the mainland to the island. So then, so that's where my mother's from. And then my mother had, she had two properties. She has one farm, and then she had one house in the village. Okay, so a house in the village is, where we live. And then the farm, that MacArthur had the land revolution where if you didn't live on the farm, you lost it. So then, she lost the farm. Okay, so then, this was in Hiroshima. So I went there about 1980 something. So I saw the house that, I was born in, and I saw the farmland and stuff like that. So this is Hiroshima, but now I think all my relatives moved to the city. So I think, there's nobody there. When I went there, some, when I went there in the 1980s, and then there was one lady there that says, I remember you in 1934 when you were born.
Wow.
Yeah, so then, she remembered me from 40 years beforehand. But I think now, nobody lives there.
Why didn't you tell them about Hideko and her sister that was the translator?
Okay, so I had a cousin. So then the cousin, was born in LA, but then they went to Japan before the war. So then there were two sisters, and then the one sister, she got killed. They're from Hiroshima, so she got killed in the A-bomb. And then the other sister, survived. And then I guess, since they graduated from LA High or Hollywood High, they could speak English, so they were translators after the war. Yeah.
I think they forced one of the sisters to work as a translator, so she was living in the city because of that when the bomb fell. So the rest of the family was okay.
Yeah, that, we're from Hiroshima, but we're, not the city, we're Hiroshima Prefecture. So then there's a little hill between the prefecture and the city. So if you live on, the other side of the hill, I guess you survived the bomb.
Another question from Zoom. During the war, was there any communication between your family and the camp and relatives in Japan?
No. No, there was no communication.
Oh, and then one more question. What did you take in the suitcases to the camp?
Okay, so everybody could, I think the main thing is clothes. Now they said to bring spoons and forks, but you didn't have to because the camp had all the spoons and forks and dishes and stuff like that. And I guess people had to bring their medicine with them.
So for school, where did they get the textbooks from?
Oh, I think the state of California supplied all the
Okay,
textbooks. So then they had
so the
textbooks.
school provided wherever,
Yeah.
whether they were in Santa Anita or
Yeah,
in Arkansas, the state was providing the
Right.
textbooks for them.
yeah, I think I think Santa Anita, it was just a short time. The spring and the summer of 1942.
Mhm.
And we went there, and I don't think they had any textbook. Yeah, I don't think they had any textbook in Santa Anita.
But they had paper because you can make an airplane.
Yeah. But they had, textbook in Arkansas.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions, Jenna? Yes, there's one more. Did you interact with the medical system while in camp?
What, the medical system?
Mhm.
Okay. So I acted, see, when I was in Santa Anita, my eyes was weak. In the Santa Anita, they had the gravel on the ground, it was all white gravel. So it's, real bright there. So then I used to get what they call a pink eye. So my eye was sort of weak. So then I went to the doctor, and the doctor, they sent me to the LA County Hospital. Now, if you go on the I-10 freeway, and you look north around downtown, you see the county hospital. Huh? You see that one building? It's a tall building, maybe 9 stories tall. So then the doctors in San Diego sent me over there. So I remember, I had to go in an ambulance to there. And then while there, I think I had my tonsils out. Yeah. See, long time ago, people thought you should take out your tonsils. So, first chance you do, you get, take it out. So that's what they did in San Diego when they sent me there, take out the tonsils.
So you go in for an eye problem and you lose your tonsils.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other, them days, people used to think it's good to take out your appendix,
Mhm.
So if I wasn't careful, I would have, lost that too, appendix.
And then one more question. Did the education in camp keep pace with the education system outside of camp?
Yeah, I think that the camp education was higher than the outside education. Yeah. Because, especially down in Arkansas, that Japanese students were good. Yeah. Now, the main thing about Arkansas, after the war, hardly any family stayed in the state of Arkansas. So they left Arkansas to go to Chicago or whatever. And one thing about Arkansas, Arkansas had a segregated school. So if you stayed in Arkansas, you might have to go to a black school and stuff. So, everybody want to leave Arkansas. Any other questions?
So Reagan signed the apology letter and
$20,000.
yeah, what did you think about that?
Oh, I think that was good. Yeah.
Besides financially.
No, it's to finally acknowledge that they did it wrong to us. $20,000.
What happened to your guys' homes?
Say again?
What happened to your homes? What if you guys left, and what was, I guess, the percentage of people who were able to go back to their homes?
Okay, so we lived in uptown in Los Angeles. And at that time, I don't think hardly any Eastside owned the house. The house, before California had the alien land law that if you're not if you're Japanese, you can buy a land in California. But I don't think too many Japanese had a house. So we didn't own a house. So then the house, was standing there, and then I could look at the what you call that internet, and look at the old house, and I think it was knocked down a couple of years ago. So I don't think the house is still there. Did you check over there on Dewey Avenue?
Is that the one we went to?
No, we
years
went to
ago?
there like not more than 5 years ago. When was?
Yeah, I think it's been knocked down since.
It's
Oh,
been
really?
knocked down. Well, it looked pretty beat up
Mm.
when we saw it.
The one where like you're in the back half
Yeah.
of the.
So I think that particular house is not there. but we didn't own it. Yeah, I think, like they had the alien land law. So I don't think any Japanese own property.
So the only thing that your parents or your dad had to sell was the truck?
Mhm.
That was the only property he really had?
Truck, and he had a sedan too.
Oh,
So
so
he
two
had,
cars.
yeah, he had 2 cars. So he would drive the truck 6 days a week, and on Sunday drive the sedan.
So if it weren't for the war, you'd probably be taking over the fruit stand, the
Right.
grocery stand, huh?
I'll be out there Pico Boulevard selling fruits 6 days a week. So then, in the morning, you have to wake up early, go to the produce market and buy the fruit. Yeah. So you gotta buy the fruit at the produce market at a cheap price and then sell it on your stand at the high price. So that's how you have to make a living.
Yeah, it wasn't easy back then, huh?
No, you have to wake up 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I'm sure your daughters would be excited to wake up at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, that was a hard way to make a living, but a lot of Issei's did that.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that I talked to a lot of these Issei gardeners, right?
Mhm.
And they wanted to give their children their gardening routes,
Mhm.
but they sent the children to college, and the children graduate, get good, they have good jobs. Then they see how hard it is, the manual labor, cutting and everything. And they go, no, I don't want to do that. So there's big dilemma where the parents, the father is looking, but no one to pass on the business. So, which is a sad thing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends whose dads were gardeners.
Yeah.
I have 0 friends who are gardeners. Yeah.
That's a tough job.
Yeah, it's a tough job. It's menial, and when you go to college and then you go, well, I'd rather work in a business or do something else than work that hard, for low wages too. It's a tough business.
Yeah, but over there where we lived before the war, uptown, most of the fathers were gardeners.
I think there's probably going to be a lot of interesting Asian American stories kind of coming from these generations, like the Koreans, the grocery stores, the Vietnamese Americans who own the donut shops.
Yes, right. Yeah, it's changed.
I think that will be for interesting history once they look back, and how their immigrant families got a foothold in the US.
Yeah, and I think the dynamics is still the same. You have a lot of immigrants coming in, taking on those jobs, the menial jobs, and all the affluent, ones that came from the second, third generation immigrants. It's starting to move in that direction. I mean, that dynamic still plays out. Wow.
We have one more Zoom question.
Mhm.
It says, after the internment camp experience, why did you choose to work in the defense industry?
Oh, I think when I graduated college and engineering, most of the jobs were in the defense business. So I worked for General Dynamics, and then they had a plant out there in Pomona, California. So I worked my whole career with General Dynamics. Now I worked for General Dynamics for about 4 years down in Tucson, Arizona. So that's when they moved the whole facility down there. And then I retired when I was down in Tucson. So then, so every year at Christmas time, we have a Christmas party. So we have the Christmas party out here in Cucamonga, I guess it is. So then people come from Arizona for the Christmas party, for the General Dynamics Christmas party. So, yeah, you know, we get together. Now, the way it worked, it looked like most people that worked at General Dynamics, they worked there about 40 years or so. So that's the only job they had after graduating from college. So, you know, we like to get together Christmas once a year right now. Yeah.
Did your parents ever become American citizens?
Yeah, I think my father did.
What was your major, you have a major regret? Do you have, I'm sure there's some regret to hindsight, but was there something that you regret happened, or you could have made a better decision? Or?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that. Is Richard see it or what? Oh, they came too late.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm watching in from Minnesota. Kids were here. They kind of got attention span is a little bit short, but I'm still here. I've been here the whole time.
That's my brother.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.